All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Sunday night Science of Getting Rich call. It is July 4th, 2021. Happy 4th of July to everybody in the United States. If you hear the noise out there, it's the fireworks going off. So we are on chapter 6 of the Count to 4 system, and we are talking about money, what it is, and how to have plenty of it. So, as we do every week, we go around the table and we're just going to go back and forth like ping pong today. So, see what was new and good for the week. Priya, I guess you can start.
Okay, yeah, it's been a good week. I think I just feel like more and more, the more we talk about money and really put it into context, this chapter actually helps a lot because just, not getting so bogged down by it, really just reinforcing that it is just an exchange of energy. It's just a form that we exchange in has been great. So it's taken me into a different space this week of how I conduct my life, how I look at my spending and that sort of thing.
Well, excellent. So, yeah, I mean, this was an interesting chapter. Well, before we get on to that, as far as myself, I'm just winding things down from my other position to get ready for this week to end that and move forward into the next chapter. So I get on a plane on Saturday. So
Wow.
I'll be getting away too for a little bit.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, and I did tell my dad. So we went out to a real nice dinner last night. So that was nice. So we are talking about money and what it is and what it is not.
Right.
So I'm blowing this up here. And I'm just going to scroll through here just a little bit. And I mean, but he comes right out of the gate and just basically says that most people, number one, they don't have the money they need and desire. And that's because they don't even know what money is. Because we think that money's either security or happiness, or we think that it's real. Like those dollar bills in our hand are the real thing. But as he says, they are not, they are just a symbol of what the real thing is. So, I mean, do you kind of buy along that philosophy?
Oh, for sure. Because like when you think about it, on any given day, trillions of dollars and more are moved around the world and nothing actually happens. Like nothing. It's just numbers change on screens when people look at them, but that's about it. There's nothing physically exchanging. So I think I wrapped my head around that quite some time ago. And that did make a profound change for me. I always look at it too, like how we used to exchange cattle or livestock or agriculture. It's no different.
I agree. And look at even in the last, I'd say maybe 20 years. Before we all used to have cash in our pocket, or you had the checkbook, which I actually have not been using a checkbook for probably 7 years. But now recently I've started just like 1 or 2 checks a month. But we always used to have cash.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the ATM came along. And, now we were going to the ATM with ridiculous fees to take cash out. But now it's gotten to the point that most people don't even carry cash anymore.
I rarely do. I just don't. And I find that too. I found like even traveling, it just was so much easier to pull money out in the country's currency that I'm visiting and not have to worry about it. So that's definitely something. But I do think that it has a flip side to it where we do lose the connection to some degree because we don't see it. So for some people, it can be very easy to spend because they're not seeing something physically go. And for some people, it could be harder because to purchase because they don't like really pay attention. They feel like it's so much. It seems like such a big number, and they don't have that money in their wallet because they're just not carrying it around or whatever. So I think that it can have two different or maybe even multiple effects on us.
Exactly. And yeah, but I like what you just said about being disconnected because, before we used to get a paycheck and then we take that money out, and, we would walk around and have that, money in our hands. But now our checks from either the employers or our clients or whatever is all electronically deposited into our accounts. And all we get is a little text message on the phone, ding, you've received,
Yeah.
$15,000 from your client. And it's like, oh yeah. And then it's like, okay. And then you want to spend it. You either tap your phone, you tap your card, you do something. So not only, I guess before it did feel like something real because, it was something that we held in our hand and we could see. But now it's even getting further away from being real because we don't even touch it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I remember when I was in my 20s, my husband and I at the time, we owned a photo finishing lab. So we used to have like a till to do transactions with our customers. And I was out of change. And my nephew was about 3 or 4 at the time. He was visiting. So I said to him, can I trade you for your change so I can fill up my till? And so I gave him, took all his change. And I must have given him like had a lot, like 25, $30 worth. And he went home crying and he said to his mom, Auntie Priya took all my money and gave me this paper.
Oh my goodness.
Because he didn't, the concept of it just didn't work for him, that he didn't understand the value, because in his mind, like these coins, like he called them his treasures, right? So she took all my treasures, which, coins have colors, shine to them, they're shiny metals, they weigh, there's lots of them. And then I gave him this like piece of paper that he thought was like, what a ripoff. What did she do? Like, who colored this? So there's something to be said, I think, too. And even, accounting for, it can be difficult to see and feel like you're getting abundant when you can't touch it or see it add up. Really, it's just a number that gets bigger, but it doesn't always register for people.
Exactly. And I mean, that's a funny story, but I mean, it's true because, even in his mind, it was built up this value, that the value is in the paper, the value is in this money. And, I don't know. This was an eye-opening chapter for me as well, because as we move on here, he talks about, the medium of exchange, and we all have heard that. And you mentioned earlier about bartering, which, was good if you could have an even exchange of your service, so maybe you did carpentry for somebody and they raised livestock, and then they gave you some livestock for your carpentry efforts.
Mm-hmm.
But then other times, how did you trade medical service when you're a carpenter and the doctor didn't need carpentry? So it could
Right.
get, it could
And
get
I
out of
think
hand.
too, when it comes down to bartering, there can sometimes be a resentment because, somebody who's growing crops, like they're talking about that, somebody who's growing crops, say, and then it takes eons or it takes a full season or something to harvest, versus someone who just offers a service. And then I find that even now, because some people still try to use bartering, and then they feel like a discrepancy between what they got and what they gave.
Right.
So
Yeah,
even though the value is higher, in terms of financial value, that it's like they don't. So sometimes I feel like that the value gets lost or misunderstood or devalued.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
And you know how we are as humans, if we feel that what our exchange, I mean, that's why people feel like they were taken advantage of. And because when we spend money for something, we have in our own mind, we have a value of what that is. But they're saying, oh, well, we charge $300 an hour. And for most people, it's like, whoa, I've never made $300 an hour, and it's like, if they don't equate that dollar amount to the value in their head, then what do they say? They say it's too expensive.
Yeah, and I went through this week. I had a woman who was a referral to me, and she came and she wanted, she gained some weight and she hasn't been able to shake it, and she heard about me and whatever, and I put together a program, and she wanted like a whole bunch of stuff. And from an energetic perspective, it's a lot of work, because also sometimes when people can't see the energy of what it takes to perform that service or produce that product, they minimize it or they devalue it, they decrease its value. And so when I came
Right.
back to her, and she was so excited, she wanted to get started right away. And then when I gave her the proposal with the price, I didn't hear from her. And so I wrote her to her a day after, and I said, I just wanted to make sure that you receive the proposal, or even to find out if you had a chance to review it. And she did write me back, and she said, to be honest, it was just the pricing was like blew my mind. And I was okay with that, because I know it was a big price, but it was also indicative of the effort that was going to be required. And, as of right now, she hasn't moved forward to book the service, but I'm okay with that, because I feel like sometimes you do have to educate people when it comes to energetic value, or, what it takes to, like, sometimes I think about, people that go to do the groceries for me. Some people will say, well, they want to do it. Why do you give them a tip, or why would that be worth it even to have that done? Well, the
Right.
service fee on $100 is $10, for every $100 that you spend. For $10, like, it normally takes that person at least an hour to shop my groceries. And then they've got plus the driving time there too, and the gasoline. So sometimes I feel like people don't really take the time to investigate the energy of something and what it takes to go into a product.
Right. And they only see what they're seeing with you at the moment. They don't
Right.
see all the background things that
No.
led up to that.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
they think, oh, well, Priya handed me this 2 sheets of like a checklist, but they don't realize it took you 9 hours to create that checklist.
Yeah, or even, the value in the training, like some of the modalities that I use, I've paid thousands of dollars to acquire those certifications, plus learn the material, plus, pass exams and things like that. It's no different than a medical doctor. I mean, when you think about it, why, or lawyers, you're paying for, experience, you're paying for the level of the price of an education that you don't have, that you're accessing someone for. So I always look at it that way, somebody's time, their effort. And there's certain things that do cost more. So I sort of tried, I thought about it if she did ask me. And the example I would give her is, I mean, I think like in the US, maybe it's like a Neiman Marcus or a Saks Fifth Avenue. So you could go into Walmart and buy a Snickers bar in Walmart. You could probably get it in Neiman Marcus or Saks Fifth Avenue, but it costs like 3 times more or 4 times more. Why? Because you've got to pay for the ambiance of shopping in this fancy space and place that costs money, right, to be in there. So
Right.
it's the same product in a different place and space. So that's part of it. Or you look at something like a diamond that to the human eye might look the same in a ring, and it might be 300 and something dollars, and it's big and whatnot. And then you get one that's like, $20,000, and it looks to the human eye the same. But when you really evaluate it and you understand the quality of it and the mining and all the 4 C's of diamonds and whatnot, then you recognize the difference in value. So I think that a lot of this too, when we talk about money exchange and energy exchange, that people are not really, they don't really take the time to learn the value of something.
right, exactly. And then all they see going out is their dollars,
Yeah,
which again, they think is real
yeah. It's
because, yeah. And they do understand value because they know what they had to do to get those dollars.
right.
And
And so I feel like people are able to relate to value only within the confines of their own lifestyle or their own, inner workings, because they can't seem to go beyond and recognize, like, even right now, I was buying some furniture and the woman was having, like, it was coming from Asia. And so it didn't show up at the end of the day. And then there was a cost, like there was an extra cost or something. But I recognize that it's COVID and it's a cargo ship and it's very expensive to get cargo from, across the world, when it's so limited and all of the extra protocols that have to be paid for. So I feel like oftentimes people don't take into account for the value of what the process is given the circumstances or what's going on. When you want something in a rush, it costs more money.
exactly, exactly. And, but a lot of people, at, they don't look at all of the ins and outs that are needed to even, like you said, bring a product to your home.
Hmm.
I mean, we've gotten so spoiled with Amazon and, you know, uh, now like you're waiting on groceries to be delivered. I mean, we have, all these food services that deliver, which of course during last year was thankful,
Yes.
that you could get food delivered. But again, now let me ask you this. Um, do you think that people see certain industries as being a little more expensive than other things? For example, when somebody needs an attorney, they know, regardless of what their personal job is, they know that attorneys are not going to be $10 an hour.
Right.
But then when they come to something like coaching
Hmm.
and somebody says, well, this package is going to be $5,000. And they're like, $5,000? Because probably in their head, they're trying to calculate an hourly fee. And it's
Yeah,
like,
I think so. And I think that even it's almost as though I always ask people, like, well, if you want like this huge results, if someone came to you and said, okay, for, $10,000 or $20,000, you can have happiness. Is it worth that to you? Or getting your goal? So I want this fabulous job. Okay, well, how much do you want it? Well, it's going to cost you. If someone came to you and said, for $15,000, you can have this fabulous job, what would you say? So there's, to me, I look at it and think, well, is it worth it? Like for me, with the stuff that I do, even when I coach, I look at, well, it's going to cost me this much, but it's going to give me the skills to make that much. Well, that's, relatively speaking, that's a drop in the bucket. So why wouldn't I? Even there's certain things, and I've seen coaches that coach me. I remember having a coach and saying to her, like, because the program wasn't that expensive, that just having, paying somebody whatever it was, $200 to come in and have accountability for every week. That's a cheap amount of money for accountability. And I knew she was taken aback by it, because it was like she was almost offended that I was calling her services cheap, but it was what it was. And so, I think we have to look at, like, what are we willing to pay for what results, and and definitely I see different industries that people do just accept with a lot more ease that it's going to cost them than others. And I think it comes down to also with, there's part of it is supply and demand, and part of it is how important it is to them.
right. Well, that's a big one. How bad do you want it?
Yeah.
And I mean, yourself, even back when you were, broke single mom mentality, if you wanted something or your kids needed something or the car needed to get fixed, it didn't matter. You did what you had to do to get it done. And
Yeah.
you always got it done.
Yeah. And so the good news is I was able to take that mentality and apply it in everything. So if I wanted something, because oftentimes we don't take the effort and momentum unless we're in a bad situation,
Right,
right? Like most people will sit there and be like, "Oh, okay, well, like you just described me. Well, if they needed something or the car, I found it." But then I got to a point where, well, if I can find it for this, it's the same finder that I'm using for, so I may as well, and the same, mindset and methods. Why can't I find it for the things that I want without it being some kind of a panic? And I think that's where, and even more so in the last year, I would say, since we've been, I've been a part of this group and other things I've been doing, is recognizing it is buttons and castles. And so I most certainly can create anything I want, because money is just an energy, and it's the same effort. Like somebody that goes in and works 6 hours a day, there's some people that come out with, maybe 60, 70, I don't know, maybe $90 for that day. And there's some
right.
people that come out with thousands. It's the same time. How is that possible? You have to look at it.
Yes, it is. And, but you were just saying that, when we need something, it's like it's a desperation, thing. We always end up getting it, but most people don't make that connection. Then, well, wait a minute. I needed the money bad for this. I didn't have it, but somehow I got it and everything was fine. Why can't I just do that with everything else? But they don't ever think that. They just wait till the next emergency.
Yeah. Right. And so in the meantime, when they could be creating on a regular basis and acquiring or enjoying or experiencing, they don't. They just live for emergency to emergency.
Right.
And
And
there is a lot of people who are tied to money through their messages. So the messages that they've received, um, they have those ties to them. So money is an attachment, money is a power, money is an evil, money is, something that's been used to control me. Like there's so many things that I see where it just, it's interesting. Like what does it really mean? Like I actually, in a female Facebook group that I belong to, a woman posted a picture of the washing machine, and the dryer was on top of the washing machine. She said, I found these, I was doing my husband's wash, and there was probably like, 10 or 12 little rolled up, I don't know how many were in them, but $20, $50 bills. And she's like, what would you do? And to see the interpretations that flew in after, regarding like, what did it mean, where was the money coming from? Oh, that if I do the laundry, it's mine. I would tell him, I wouldn't tell him. Like there's so many things that came from that one little post as to different mindsets around money and what it actually meant. Like there was one woman that was like, well, what's he doing to get all this money that's just sitting in his pocket? Where did that come from? Because we didn't have it for this last week, or that's right. So there's so much stuff that's attached to it.
right. And probably the majority of all of it is meaningless. And it
Yeah.
is so far off base that, but people like to make up their own stories to match what they think in their head.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden, he's saying he doesn't have money and he has money, well, then he must be doing something. Did he hit the lottery and not tell me? What's he doing? Is he selling drugs? I mean, what's he doing?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and we make those judgments, not, I mean, not we, but a lot of people make judgments too. They see somebody driving around in a they live in a lower end neighborhood, and they're driving around in a Mercedes. What's the first thing people say? Oh, they're a drug dealer.
Yeah.
You don't know that.
No,
You
no, you
know,
don't.
maybe they just would rather focus on having a nicer car than a nicer house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Or
mean,
there's so many things. Like again, we don't even know where it came from. We don't even know if they won it in a lottery. Like we have, who knows where it really came from. But there is, and then you see different things, the judgments around how people do use their money, or when they could do it for this or that. I mean, even for myself sometimes, I'm big on, because I come from a home with a real estate mom. It's so ingrained in me, like buy a house, own a property. So, sometimes when I see some of my friends my age that still struggle, or they didn't plan and now they don't have homes, you're sort of like, how does that, how did that happen? But that's my thing, right? Because I'm just so caught up. So I think our money stories have a huge impact on how we are able to even process that money is an energy, and how we use it, and what the rules are that we have created around it.
Right. And it also works in the opposite too, because
Hmm.
how many stories have you seen where somebody, they had everything
Hmm.
growing up? They had all the money, they had the schools, they had everything, and then they inherit that money or something, and then they broke. They're
Yeah.
broke, or they're in rehab, or there's something, because they never, they knew about the how do you say it? They knew about what to do with the money and how to live the lifestyle, but they had no clue about the management of it, what
Yeah.
it took to create it,
I
nothing.
know. I see that a lot because, as my husband is from the islands, and so when he got here, it was very much that, because we live in a fairly affluent neighborhood, and just seeing all the things, but not really understanding even the upkeep of a home, like even the maintenance of it. So you can have a house that looks like that, or is in that has those things. So I think that not everyone is able to process what those goals and accomplishing them really endure, and what it takes to be that, and how to keep it going. It's because a lot of times too, we're not sold that story. We're told, oh, struggle and then do this and it comes, and then you have all this money, and then this is what you do with it. You buy cars, you buy houses, you spend it in the club, you do VIP, this, that, and the other, right? So that's but I think that also has to do with what he was talking about with around symbols, and the symbolism, like that status
Right.
symbol that comes attached with how much or how little money you people think you have.
Well, and also a lot of it is, you work all your life, and then in retirement, then you can spend your money. It's like, what kind of a life is that? Then most of the time you're so burned out, you've
Hmm.
created sickness in your body,
For sure.
you've created sickness in your relationships, and you don't want to do anything.
No, and that was huge because I came from a home like that, where my parents put everything into working, coming from another country, and having that mindset of building, and they just worked and worked and worked, and for later. And then when later sort of came, they were the illness struck, and not able to. And so then I looked at that and I saw it kind of headed that direction. I was like, not me. So because what people fail to realize too, and if you watch most people, they start to minimalize, they become more minimalistic as they get older, they downsize, they declutter, they get rid of things. So to me, it's really about, it's kind of a funny cycle in life. It's acquisition to dump it later, and nobody and get rid of it because you don't want it anymore, right? Because you've experienced it. It's like stale gum. So you kind of you chew on life until it gets stale, and then you don't need it anymore. But what I find is that people do it backwards, and they feel like, oh, I better just keep the same piece of gum in my mouth and not get a new one, because what if there isn't any more gum, or I've been taught to, like, make it last and stretch it out. But I find a lot of people miss out on living life in the years of which the body supports that, so you can be
Right.
active, engage in things that bring you joy, and let you be experiential, and they wait too long.
Right. And like I said, as an example, I told you we went to family dinner last night. So dinner, the three of us, dinner was probably like $300. I mean, with drinks and, food and everything. And then my dad, today he was talking about something. He's like, well, I'm going to get this. He's like, no, I'm not going to get that because I don't want to spend the extra $10. And I'm thinking, hey, we just spent $300 on dinner last night, and now you're saying about $10? And, you know,
Yeah, but I
and that's
think
that
what I've
minimalistic
learned
view.
is, and I think I have some of this too, maybe we all do. I think there's a level of value that we have for certain things. So like say your family having dinner, that falls in the priceless category. So that's something you can't really put a price on versus say something that it's an extra $10 where you don't need to spend it. You've learned to do without it. You might not have self-importance, so you don't drop it on yourself. But when it comes down to, and I see it all the time with my parents, like when it comes to my kids, the stuff that they do and my nephew, there are no limits. There are no limits. There are some limits when it comes to my sister and I because they love the
Right.
kids more than us. But you know, but I think when it comes to themselves, there are a lot of limits. And so they're self-imposed based on the way that they value themselves. And you can see the tiers, when I say tiers, TIERS,
Right.
of which they
Yes.
value, things in life and what they're willing to spend money on.
Right. And family for a lot of people, that's a top tier. And they'll spend money there. You know, they'll
Yes.
spend money on their kids, their, you know, things like that. But like you said, a lot of people then when it comes to themselves in that situation, they'll cut back to the bare minimum for
Yes, they
themselves.
will.
And
Okay. I just have to pause. Can we just pause for a second? Will
yes,
you will you keep talking?
I'll go.
You keep talking solo.
I,
Not so low, but solo. You can do, then now's your opportunity for your big monologue. Okay, Rodney, take it away. I'll be right
okay.
back.
Well, I'm just going to read a little bit here. So, as we were talking about, that money is a symbol for something. So we've said that money is a symbol and is not the real thing. We've said that money is a medium of exchange of something real. But money is also an expression of the real thing. And money makes it possible for us to express ourselves in our lives. Money makes it possible for us to do the things that brings happiness. It makes it possible for us to have the things which are desirable. But it is also a container. Money is also a warehouse, a storage unit, which makes it possible for us to render the real thing, that which money is the symbol of, in abundance. And it makes it possible for us to render a service, and money is a container into which we store those units of service. So, and a lot of people do not look at it that way. They look at it that I worked 40 hours this week and I earned $1,000 and I make X amount per hour. And we've talked about this in the past, that you don't get paid for time, you get paid for the value that you bring to the marketplace. And this chapter is really, really hitting on that it is about value. So, next thing is so he actually takes this example, and you can tell that these numbers are dated. So he says a man who earns $300 per month. Now, in today's terms, $300 per month is not very good. So he earns $300 a month and he only uses 200 of that. So he has a surplus of $100 worth of service. And that's what he puts aside for his savings. So if he does that for a year, then he has 1,200 units of service available that he can then trade. Now, of course, during the year, he does have other opportunities to, again, make himself more valuable. He can make himself more valuable in his current position or his job, and maybe increase his earnings from $300 per month to $400 per month. So now he can still live on 200, but then save an extra 200. So again, it's about making yourself more valuable. Therefore, you are able to demand more of this thing that we call money. Let's see. Now this next part is pretty important. And we've covered this before about cause and effect. And let's just give it a second here. These the fireworks are just crazy. It just is crazy out here with all this noise. But let's see. Well, let's start to get into it. So in other words, in that example, we saw that money is not the real thing, but the real thing is service. And that service is whatever you're doing or whatever you're wanting to do. But in other words, money is the effect, not the cause. Your effect is the thing that you were doing. And then the amount of money you receive for that. I mean, the cause is what you were doing, and the amount of money you received is the effect. But people who think that having plenty of money would solve all their problems, they're only looking at the effect. That's why a lot of the lottery winners, they're usually broke very, very quickly, because as we just talked about a minute ago, they do not know about the management of that sum of money. They're used to their consciousness, which is everything that they've learned up to that point, even with money, is at a certain level. It is not at a level way, way, way up here that they just want. So they tend to kind of go back down to the level they were. And that, of course, since money is the effect and not the cause, the effect dissipates, and next thing you know, all their winnings are gone. So kind of skimming through here. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, did you hear me reading all that stuff?
And the driver went to like the wrong building, so I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
So you have your sustenance now?
I do.
So I know you ordered greasy burgers and fries and everything. No, you have something green for sure. Right?
I have a little bit of everything because I like a little bit of, I have a balanced diet. So I have some stuff that might not be considered as healthy, and then I have things that are.
Well, I gotta say, I paid when I was in Colorado the other night. We're talking about value and things that we want. Well, and things that we probably shouldn't want, but we still do anyway. So I was at the hotel and there was a Dairy Queen there. I just felt like ice cream. So I walk over to the Dairy Queen and it's like drive-through only. And I'm like, well, what the hell? What about people that, because it's in a big
Yeah.
shopping mall, you know? So that kind of burned me a little bit. So I went back and I pulled up Uber Eats and I'm looking for ice cream. Well, there's a Baskin Robbins. So, and then they say the delivery fee is $14.79. I'm like, well, I want a banana split. So I ended up paying $38 for a banana split.
I hear you. I've done some stuff.
Now I customized it. I didn't give vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. You know,
Yeah.
I could choose my ice creams. But yeah, $38 for a banana split. Now most people would say that is very, very stupid and a waste of money. But I wanted the banana split and I was committed, and it didn't matter. You know, your friends, they're walking all over and they're oh, now they're both laying down.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep them quiet because there's so many sounds in this condo building. So
Oh, that's okay. They're nice and calm.
yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
so that was my banana split story.
Yeah, but that happens, and that's what I'm thinking is that I feel like so many people miss out on things on life because and they the idea about money being this big bad thing, like, or having that so much power that they don't even investigate. Like I was saying last week, how much do you really want? When I would always ask friends like, oh, okay, well, how much money do you want? Oh, I want, okay, what are you going to do with it? Like, and so to me it's just because it becomes so unattainable and so far away, but it isn't that far away and it is easily attainable. And because people don't actually do their due diligence and investigate and seek knowledge and learn the values of things, they go through life without experiencing it that way.
Right. And that just brings it all back to everything we cover. Like you said, okay, well, how much money do you want? Oh, I want lots of money. Okay, what do you want the money for? Oh, I don't know. Again, people don't even know what they want. So they don't even know in reality how much money they actually need to accomplish the things that they want. And usually it is far less than what they believe it to be.
It really is. And that's what gets me. It really is far less. And even when, even mindsets of borrowing money, like my parents were so against the money borrowing, or having a mortgage or having a credit card. But there are so many things that I've been able to do that comes from borrowed money. And like, even with the interest rate, sometimes those things, if I say, I took a course and yes, I may have paid $200 in interest fees to put that course on my card or whatever, but it turned around and helped me make $10,000. Okay, you do the math, right? So it's worthy. And I just find sometimes people don't really pay attention to life in both ways, right? So some people are paying for things, interest 20-25% extra on things, and they don't really pay attention to it when it's not necessary. But I think it's a lot to do with knowing and using things to your advantage, and not that borrowing money or for the purpose of creating more is so many people look at it sometimes with a stigma, like that the D word, you have a debt.
Right. But debt is good for certain things. And now, like in your case, you never even lost that $200 in interest because then you can turn around and take it off on your taxes because
Right.
it's a business expense because you
Totally.
used it for your business.
Yeah,
And
100%, right? So there's so many things where you look at that and you go, okay, I just don't see the point. And with different things, certain things that you can get lines of credit or equal payment plans or things like that, where people, you could be like, even today, what was it? My daughter came to me today and she says, I'd really like to buy a ring, but it's so expensive. So I had to ask, like, what's your expensive at 23? And she said, oh, it's about $100. And she's trying to get her head around value. So I said, well, that's not that much money. And she said, well, Mom, $100 is like a phone payment monthly, or, payment towards my student loan. And I said, yeah, but $100 over 10 months is $10 a month, or over 5 months is $20 a month. And how easily do you blow $20 a month? Right. So I
Right,
think too, when we look at things, it's like sometimes people don't realize how much they're spending on their Starbucks coffee every day, and what it adds up to, and where it could be going, because they're just so caught up in a belief system that they cannot have what they want.
right. And you, like you just said, Starbucks is a prime example because they are habitually going to Starbucks. That's the morning ritual. They get up, they get dressed, they get their shower, they get ready for work, they're out the door, they go through the drive-through at Starbucks. And every day it's $5 to $7 every single day.
Yeah.
30 bucks a week, $120 a month. There's your $100.
Yeah, so to me, it's like it does come down to paying attention to the energy of what you enjoy. On the flip side of things, I have a financial advisor that I've been, dealing with for years, and she's so proudly says, "I've never bought a cup of coffee from Starbucks or Tim Hortons in my life. I but bring my coffee to work. I bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches." And then, but you look at her, and there's still an element, as much money as she has, she lives in scarcity. So from the flip side of things, it's like you're not really, she flies a private plane around the world, but she's getting up making jelly and peanut butter sandwiches, and she's not doing it from a place of joy. It's not like, I just loves me some peanut butter and jelly. It's like
Right,
she's doing it because it's that scarcity mentality, that she can't have that. You don't do things like that and have money. But yet she flies a plane, for one, around the world, or two sometimes if she takes her partner. And all of the money that's involved in owning a plane, and the hangar and the fuel and the like, that's, so it doesn't, half the times when people justify things or rationalize them, they don't make any sense.
right. And then probably when she tells her story to people, she says, well, this is how I became wealthy
Yes.
because I didn't go out and buy coffees and I made my lunch and I did this, which we know is total BS. That has nothing to do with why she
I
received the
know.
money.
And so this is my point, is that so many people deny themselves of things because they think that it's, how shall I say? Oh gosh, what's that word? I'm hearing like it makes
Splurging,
them, no, but it also, it's like it's righteous. It's like almost like with an integrity, that they're proud that
to
they struggle.
suffer.
Yeah.
And well, we've learned in the science of getting rich, you know, even with God, God wants you to have abundance because the more of an abundant life you can live, that means more things that God can enjoy through you. That means the more things that you can do for those around you, that you can do for, other people, charities, whatever you want to do. You cannot do any of those things without resources. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you could, but then how are you going to take care of you?
And I just see that oftentimes it's it's a mentality of struggle, but they're still not obtaining what they want, and yet they're depriving themselves of what they would prefer. And it's hard, even right now, like with my own husband. He has a really strong lack mentality, and it's very difficult for him sometimes to see that, like, oh no, we live in abundance, so we don't need to do that, or we don't have to consider that factor, like, have whatever it is that you like.
Right. And
But
but
he's coming
see,
from a mindset of, you are going to have one meal today somewhere on the road, wherever, it's either going to be through a drive through, or a little mom and pop shop, and that's your one meal. So make it good, make it last, buy what's going to give you the most, um the most volume, or the most quantity, and go from there. Like, look at bulk.
right. And again, there is nothing, nobody's saying that there's anything wrong with saving. I mean, if
Nope.
you're in the market for a vacuum cleaner, okay? And you know what you want. I want this brand of vacuum cleaner, this, and this. You've already researched it. This is what people do. They research things now on the internet. They look at the reviews. And this person is selling it for $700. And this person is selling it for $400. Now, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're not just going to purposely pay the
Yeah,
$700, not
look
unless
at,
there's a,
yeah,
maybe it's a, maybe the $700 is a business that, you really believe in, they're whatever. So then
yeah,
you do it because you want to do that. But mostly you're going to say, well, I'm going to take the $400.
for sure. Like tonight, right? I'm here. The last time I ordered groceries from the Instacart, the lady said, "Oh, I asked her about getting some soup because I wasn't feeling well that day, and she said, "Oh, this particular store, you could get the soup." So I went on there, but I couldn't get the soup, right? So I had chosen all my groceries, which were easily everything was $2 to $3 more. And then when I got to the end to order the soup, I couldn't get it. So I went to the other store where I got it last time, and I saved probably like 20 extra bucks because, and like the convenience of dumping it out of the order, like editing it and like boop, boop, boop,
Right.
but I wasn't gonna. Why would I? I mean, I could take that 20 bucks and tip the driver better. I ended up taking half of it and like, oh, my two dogs are here. Here's a couple extra toys because I didn't bring any. Like, because I know, you know what I mean? There's just other things you can do with it. There's totally nothing wrong with savings, but what I'm saying is that I think that some people, that energy of that money holds them into that mindset of always having to save and be in that rainy day mindset, and it just keeps them out of living life.
Right. And in that example, they know they need a new vacuum, but they're not going to do it
Yeah.
until the other one catches on fire. And then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, crap, now we better get it.
Well, see, and this is the other example I have, because when I was here last time, I stayed in another unit and they had this beautiful fridge, and I totally love the fridge. And I was like, oh, such a cool fridge, honey. We should get one, but ours is still working. So,
Oh, that's what you said last week.
yeah. And then I go home a couple weeks and my ice maker conked out on me. My father comes over to visit for Father's Day. The first time the man is coming over for a visit in 14 months because we're allowed. My son offers him a Glenlivet 18-year-old scotch on the rocks, and we have no rocks because the
Right.
ice maker stopped working. And I was like, ah. So then I'm like, oh my God, did I manifest an opportunity to have a new fridge? Because I didn't want to just buy one. It had to break first.
Right. You had to have a justification to do it.
Yeah.
And this is as
Right.
good as any. We had rocks. Now we only have pebbles. So we're going to do it.
We don't need a fridge. And so, but then what ended up happening was I researched the fridge I wanted. I had it in a cart. I had a conversation with the guy. I was like, hang on, let me just, I got to find a matching stove. So let that sit for a day or two. The ice maker started working on its own again.
Now, see, now again, that's one of those things. It's a mystery of the mind.
Yep.
You just can't figure out what happened there. It's like, okay, it happened. Now it's working.
Yep. And so for me, I look at that and think it's an opportunity to evaluate what you really want. Right? Because then I started looking at it, and just like you said, do I really want to go buy a fridge? My fridge is 15 years old. I never even lived in a house long enough to own a fridge for 15 years. So I'm looking at it thinking, I Google, how long does a fridge last? Normally average. Because I was like, it makes sense. Is it something that's going to last me 25 years, or is this? So it did say 15 years is the average lifespan.
Right.
So now it got me to a point of thinking, oh, I need to prepare for that, because I do not want to be waiting for a fridge right now with the pandemic. The fridge and stoves are on back order.
Right. And it could be 3 months.
Right. So you don't want to be in a situation because you were trying to save and it isn't really busted yet. So those are those types of things where I feel like that energy of money, if we were a lot more free flowing with it, then we would act differently if we understood that it was just really an energy.
Right. Well, so did you order the refrigerator?
I didn't, because I'm I'm still toying with it was actually because of the stove. So I'm toying with switching over to gas for a gas stove. So I would just wanted to look into who I could get and lining everything up because I'd want it all done at one shot. Right. So
Right.
it's more a lining up issue than it is really a purchasing factor. Because
Okay.
I saw this now too. They have a fridge where you touch it and you can see inside. So when my kids stand
Yes.
there and look at it for 5 minutes thinking something else is going to grow or something while they're watching it, I don't have to have the door open.
Right. Not unless you have everything in the little Debbie green containers.
Yeah.
And you look through and you can't tell what the hell's in the container anyway. It's like, well, we got to open the door.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I'm now heading back here to the book. And this was I thought this was interesting. I started to say this when you were, at the door. So people who think that having plenty of money would solve all their problems are dealing with effect and not cause. The reason why the majority of people in this world do not have all the money they need is that they are always dealing with effect only. They are constantly trying to harvest, which is effect without planning, which is the cause. So if we harvest all the time without replanning, soon we have nothing to harvest. And
So would you equate that to like paycheck to paycheck?
That would be paycheck to paycheck. And it would also go back to what you just said before. Okay, you put a $3,000 course on your credit card. That's going to make you $10, $15, $20,000.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people do is they'll put a $3,000 something on there that does not create
tickets to a concert.
Right. Something that it's going to be enjoyable, but it's not going
it's not
to
an investment.
Whoa, are we going like
we're
the
moving? My battery's running out. And I had to sit there because the dogs were barking when I sat here before. And I'm like, okay, I'll sit on the couch with you. Now the battery's running. I'm like, poor Rodney. If I die on him, there's no Carolyn here. So let me make sure the phone is charging.
I'll just go into another monologue. But yeah, so they spend that money and now they have the D word.
Yeah.
They're in debt, but it was not something that was going to create more abundance in their life. Yes, it created abundance in memories and fun and joy, but it was an effect and they harvested, but they didn't plant anything.
Yeah. I think exactly. It's like they benefit from it, but it doesn't reinvest itself. And that's what I find a lot of people do. So there's certain things. And I think it's either something you come across in life. Maybe sometimes it comes with maturity or, it's taught to you, but I think it's like, what really makes sense and what's going to be worth your while. There's some things that are going to be just a harvest dump. You're not getting any, like you're just eating the harvest. It's not doing anything. And then I think there's a balance where that's concerned, and also like being mindful of that actually exists, because some people don't even recognize that there are some things that will bring you extra crops.
Right.
Like since we're using this example, it's almost like buying a new tractor that's going to let you, till your land or do something else faster so that you can produce more. It's going to be an investment. It's going to cost up front, but in the long run, it does this, right? So I think a lot of people don't buy into that.
Well, you touched on something, the paycheck to paycheck. Now let's just take somebody that is an employee. Because a lot of people, and if people want to be employees, there's nothing wrong with it. But they know what their planning is every week. Their planning is the value they're providing for the 40 hours. They also know what their harvest is.
Yes.
Weekly or bi-weekly. So let's say that their harvest is $1,000 a week. So in a month, that's $4,000 a month. but they're harvesting $6,000 every month.
Yeah.
So, which is okay, but then the question becomes, okay, if you want to continue to harvest $6,000 and you are currently only planning 4,000 a month, what are you going to do to make up that difference? And most people are like, well, I'm not going to do anything. Maybe I'll get a raise. No, that's not how it works. You need to become more valuable. And then you made a good example. You said, well, you know, people, they don't want to do anything. They don't know about what they're spending, or they're spending on something that doesn't create anything, even if it's like upgrading the tractor or something like that, they can do better. Okay, so start your own business at home, start a small business. What does it do? You might not be making any money at it, but you know what you get? You get all these tax benefits to help get back the money that they're taking from your $1,000 a week, every week that you're planning.
Yeah. But a
Oh,
lot
but
of
that's
people
too
end up
difficult.
like, they get up getting stressed. So what do? They go on vacation or they buy
Right,
something to make them feel better because they're stressed out. And it's like, it's just not using their energy in a direction that's going to help them. It's not the real problem.
right. Or they pick up a bad habit or something. They start, and there's nothing wrong with having alcohol, but they start drinking and they start drinking more. And now they're spending extra money out of their harvest money now for alcohol, but now they're starting to get overweight. They're starting to have health issues. Now they got to buy medication. They got to, and all of this, you
Yeah.
know,
I saw it
it,
this past few days. I have friends that, they work in yoga and spiritual holistic type healing. A couple, they came together, they met each other, and they got pregnant within 3 months of knowing each other. So they have this child now, and they're barely making ends meet. She had 2 kids already. They're barely making ends meet on their own. So they've come together. Now they've got this family, and it's just like it's not working. And I've been talking to them for quite some time, sort of trying to get them, like you say, let's get a little bit of business going. There's so much expertise that you have here. There's lots of things that you could try to do. Can't see it, can't figure it out, whatever. The child, the woman's older daughter got, like, at the age of 13, was diagnosed with diabetes last week, hospitalized. So now, the amount of time that they're going to have that needs to be focused towards the child, and they had some tax issue that came in. They can't function. For me, I was happy as friend to be able to turn around and be like, here's $1,000. She had a bill for $250 that she wasn't going to be able to pay, and I was like, here's $1,000. Like, take some of that pressure off of you. But sometimes I feel like people don't recognize that money does ease life. It's because it is the form of currency that we use to exchange for ease, assistance, help, luxury, comforts, like health, wellness, all of those
right,
good things. And so it does, you have to look at sometimes when I was trying to explain to them a little bit, you guys, I understand that, we all work in holistics and from a natural place and space, but being broke is not good for anybody. Like, it just doesn't help.
right. And that's where people, I think a lot of people get it wrong because they're not willing to do the things they need to do for the planning. They like to
Yeah.
harvest all the time, and they like to harvest more than their reap. They like to reap more than they're sowing. But then when it comes time to it, it's like, look, you either need to cut down your harvest or you need to start planting more.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not going to plant more, but I'm going to keep harvesting. And well, that's only going to last for so long, and then until you're going to have yourself in trouble, and then financially, then you're a financial disaster. That's
And I
what
think
you
part
turn
the
into.
level of stress that occurs for people is what really, starts the spirals downwards, because it gets harder, and then it's harder to get out of, and it's more to get out of, and then it becomes more stressful. And so you look for more relief, and that relief might come in terms of more times out, or more luxuries, or more something to take away the uneasiness.
Right,
It's
which
funny
then,
because I watched, like, my ex-husband is an executive. He works for as a what is that one with the CIO, Chief Information Officer. So he makes a good living, but it's tough for him, like, because of the way that he manages the money. But he has a side hustle that he was working on, and he said, so I saw him last week. He says, I'm going to be up all night. I said, why? Well, because I'm preparing for this thing tomorrow. And I was like, oh, do you need help? And it's like, no, I'm preparing for it. And, you know, I'm going there, and I bought a tent because it's an outdoor fair, and I had to buy this and I buy that. And he says, I'm not going to make any money, but I'm not really, I'm not trying to make money. And I was like, oh, so you have a business that you're not trying to make money from? And he said, no, well, I just think it'll be a nice day, and I can, I'm going to sit in this park and under this tent. And I said to him, why don't you just buy the tent and go to the park and skip the stress?
right, under the guise of having a business.
Yeah, or just go to the park. Like, take whichever this friend of yours, just the two of you, go sit under the park. But there's also, I feel, sometimes the mindset around, I'm trying to do something for money, to give value to something.
Right.
It's like, I was trying to make that happen, or
Oh, and again, but see, now there's all things to unpack in that. Number one, okay, if somebody wants to start a business, that's great. They realize that they need to do something more, and that's fine. But the other thing that they have to realize is, number one, you may not make money right away. And I mean, statistically, at least here in the United States, the majority of businesses really don't make business for the first 5 years.
yeah. I mean, that's why we get same thing here. We get tax breaks for that, for take running at a loss for the first 5 years before they even kind of start to raise an eyebrow at you and see what you're doing.
Right. And the other thing is, most businesses are out of business within the first year because they can't take it. But people need to realize, and I think this is a mindset issue, because they always think that they need to do everything perfectly.
Mhm.
What makes anybody think that you start something new with skills that you're going to need to learn new skills? Say you want to open up a hot dog stand, one of the
Yeah, like the carts
or a food truck.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've been working as a welder. That's your career. Well, you probably don't know anything about running a food truck. So why would you think that you're going to step out of the gate and you're going to just be making bank right away? No, you're going to go through a learning curve. Hopefully you're smart enough to maybe pay somebody that knows about food trucks to be your mentor, to guide you through that, which
Yes.
again would be a business expense, which would be the money that comes back to you at the end of the year in taxes. But it would probably save you 3 to 4 months of a learning curve of trying to figure out on your own. And that's perfectly fine to do.
Yeah,
But
I
a
know.
lot of people, it's like, no, I got to do it myself. And I've been trying, I've tried for 2 weeks. Nobody's buying my hot dogs. So,
Well, and then on the flip side of things, there are people that feel like, oh, well, I have to struggle because most businesses, they say most businesses struggle for the first 5 years. So I can't, so there's sometimes even the level of effort that people might put in is different. It just depends what the mindset is. But I think when it really comes down to it, it is a connection to the energy and the messaging you have around money, how you're connected to it, how it makes you feel. That's like actually an exercise I do with my clients when we work on money mastery, is like, hold the money and, like, how does it feel to you? What is it saying to you? What do you have to do to have more of it? Why don't you have, like, why isn't it coming to you right now? What's going on? And you'd be surprised, like, how many people don't realize that they have so many blocks around it because of their messaging or something else that they feel disempowered. When you think about money, look at the Forbes list. What does it speak to?
Well, it speaks to status, that you
Right.
have to
So
be
it's
like this.
so what do we call it? Net worth. So
Right,
your worth for most people equals your worthiness. It's a logical connection to make. And so how many people walk through life thinking, well, I'm not worthy because I don't have worth. And that's like a vicious cycle, because I've seen it so often, is that until you feel worthy, you won't have value for a lot of things.
right. And people always compare themselves to others. And
Well, yeah, for sure they do. And you know what? People are always having it put in their face what people are doing so that they can compare themselves. And that's again that vicious loop that keeps us going and trying harder to keep, buying more these little programs and the clicks that you see on Facebook and things like
right,
that to get for whatever it is, whether it's your weight, whether it's your life, whether it's how you feel, whether it's there's everything out there.
right. And I love using this networking example, because a lot of people, they see somebody walk across the stage and they're like, when I got started, in my first 2 weeks, I recruited 60 people and I was doing this and this and this. And then these people are sitting there thinking, wow, he's not very smart, so I can do that, but I must be doing something wrong. But what they didn't realize is this person had a lot of influence over a lot of people. As an example, and I think I use this like when we first started Science of Getting Rich, like my attorney, you know, she, a lot of people, she has a lot of influence with a lot of people. So if she decided, hey, I'm going to start investing in real estate. Do you want to invest in real estate? A lot of people are just going to say yes because of who she is. They don't know anything about real estate. She doesn't know anything about real estate, probably. But because she asked them, they're going to do it, and
Mhm.
they're probably not going to do well because they can't duplicate what she does. But these people, they compare themselves and say, well, wow, but if I didn't recruit 60 people in 2 weeks, there's something wrong. But they don't look at themselves and they don't say, well, wait a minute, I'm not doing the things I need to do. So it's the business, it's a scam. I
Yeah,
knew it
that's
was a scam.
I see that all the time. And
It's like,
then even with my own clients, sometimes it's like, well, how come you can do that? And I'm like, yeah, but I get up every day and I start right from the minute my eyes open. I have processes and tools that I use. Even tonight, like how easy would it be for me to say, hey, Rodney, I'm out of town. I'm not going to do it tonight. Even when I know the groceries are going to come at 9:30, I'm just going to come, because for me, it's part of the mindset of being amongst, and talking about this and giving energy and attention to the money the way that I want to talk about it.
right.
Because I'm sure I could find one of my friends who's broke right now and have a conversation with them while I sit here.
But they wouldn't know anything you're talking about and they wouldn't
Well, I
believe
mean, and
anything
I
you're
could just
saying.
talk about, and I would eventually be agreeing with them by the end and being like, yeah, 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 right. So it's more so this is a way. So there's certain mindsets, decisions, and practices, and that people that, when you want to do these things, that people don't realize what it takes to actually put those efforts in. And I think again, it like loops right back to where we started at the beginning of the conversation, is not knowing the value of something and why you would want to put effort into it and what effort it takes. But a lot of times people want to have something without knowing the value of it, and value it, like the energy of money, is not something that can be seen sometimes.
Right. And again, they're looking at the money itself
Totally.
physically, the money, and they think that that is what is needed. And that is not what is needed.
It's so true. And even right now, the coaching program I'm in, this woman put us through a 30-day process. And so you'll get people on day 2 jumping ahead. And she's like, just stick with the days. Cause it's like, that's the way it's going to work. Don't worry about that. That will come, but do what you need to do here today. And what I've seen is there is a lot of mindset work in the early days of this program that I can tell you people glossed over And so they might have some early success with it, but it will start to taper off because they haven't done what's needed to sustain it.
Right. And, but see, that's in everything. That's in everything. And it doesn't even have to be financial. That's in their diet. That's in their
Yep.
hobbies. That's in their, I mean, how many new golf clubs are sitting around in people's garages that they bought and probably never even went out on the range and used? And they just
Yep.
sit there because they got all excited about it. Oh, I'm gonna golf. I'm gonna go out there and golf. They buy all this equipment and then nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just like everything else in their life. They just quit
Yeah.
before they even did anything.
Because
They
there's
didn't even
effort.
give it a chance.
They go and they're not perfect at it right away, and so it, and that's a great example, because golf is really a mindset connect with your body game. So it's like, okay, oftentimes people will just check out within the first little while because it's hard.
Right. But
And
it's
it doesn't.
not hard at
No,
all.
it's
It's
but
just you don't know what to do yet.
Yeah. And I think that's when we look back and we talk about different things where, even the example, or sort of what you're saying, well, I'm just a housewife. Why do I need to know this and that? The mindset around money is needed for everyone to know. I don't care what you do. You need to know the value, the energy of money, what you choose. You need to know your messaging around it and how you use it. If you know that you are empowered and you make decisions around money and you control the money around you and you choose to have nothing, then that's totally fine. But if you're having nothing and because you feel money has power over you and you can't get at it, then that's not okay, because everybody can have access.
Right. Now, let me ask you about this, and I know you probably heard this. Like you're talking to a lady, and she said, when it comes to finances, oh, I don't worry about it. My husband takes care of all that money stuff. I don't need to worry about that. And the first thing I usually say to them is, well, what happens if your husband's not around to take care of it? You know, it's fine that he does take care of it, but you should also be aware of what's going on. You don't need to know every little detail, but you need to have a sense of what's happening, because anything could happen at any time. And then you're like, well, oh, what do I do? And then you're in a panic.
Oh, for
You know,
sure. Yeah.
we
I mean,
have to have some knowledge.
for sure. I actually was affiliated with an organization that was just about that, is educating women around finances, because one, we're sort of still schooled to a degree that it's not important for us to know. And I think that I do see, for whatever reasons, life is changing. Divorce is far more prominent, and or not getting married than it was. So you need to know how to. You can make those choices, but you need to know how to navigate. And I think too, I'll take it a step further, is being someone who relation coaches and works on marriages. That often too can be a big bone of contention, or a big problem, is when we don't have either similar mindsets around money, or we're both not on board with it. Because I've seen instances, and I've been in a situation in my early marriage when we had a business, and I was spending and buying this and buying, in my head, like one day I look at the books, and like we were in huge trouble, and I said to my husband, why don't you tell me? Oh, well, I didn't want you not to have what you want. I didn't want you to think that I couldn't give you, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, but we're broke. Like, I'd rather not have la 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 and not be broke. Didn't you
Right.
think so? There's so many things, or not understanding. Sometimes there is one partner who doesn't recognize that what it takes to work and put, bring that amount of money in and keep the household running, and the things that get juggled so that things can happen. And so I think that, yeah, being aware and owning financial responsibility in your life at all ages, was as early as you can, is great. Like, and I see it, I see between my two younger kids. My daughter, who is 11, is very financially savvy. And she'll say to like my son, he's like, oh, I'm gonna buy this thing for Nintendo. It's an upgrade. And she's like, why do you want that? You're gonna waste your money and then they're gonna be another upgrade and then you won't have any. I mean, when you look at their savings account, she's got $600 and he's got 29 because he's constantly buying the latest NBA 2K or whatever it is right out there
Right.
and bumping them up, and she's putting her money away. And even the other day I had her help me with something. So I said, I need help to do something. I'm offering this much to do it. And so later on, I was talking to her. She wanted some things to redo her room. And I said, okay, well, send me a list from Amazon. And when I have the money, I'll start purchasing them. And she goes, well, you can take that money that you owed me for the job I did today and put it towards the things I want.
Well,
Right?
and where's she learning that from? She's not learning it from school.
Right. So it is about those types of things, and they are starting to learn. I think it is teaching teaching this to your children. It's different. Their dad is very much in a lack mindset. I need to be employed, and my son was following along with that. Now he's doing what he's doing, and I showed him a way. It's difficult because his father thinks he needs to get a job, but at the age of 20 he makes $133 an hour doing what he's doing. So because his father doesn't understand his work, he devalues it. But I guarantee you, my son will probably be making more than his dad in 5 years from now. And then what's going to happen? Then it's okay, right? So there's also all of that, the way that we interact with people in terms of what we see as valuable and not valuable, that can also fracture how things revolve and evolve in the world.
Exactly. And like you said, it's never too early to learn. 11 years old. My son, 19 years old, I talked to him about writing down what he wants, thinking that stuff doesn't work. He
Yeah.
doesn't have a pot to piss in, but he's already at 19 years old
Well,
deciding.
and this is an 11-year-old girl who wanted to bake. She was baking cupcakes and selling them, right? And then the pandemic hit, and she said, "Mom, I'm not, because of the pandemic, the cupcakes aren't going well." So she got me to buy her this Cricut machine. So she makes T-shirts and different little things, and now she's got that going. So I'm like, sometimes I look at it and I think there are a lot of people out there that don't. They'd be stuck on, oh, my cupcakes aren't selling, and trying to peddle cupcakes, where she just moved on and went to something else and said, this is what is working, because she's not caught up in it. And there isn't an attachment to her worth about it. It's just, I'm trying to get an exchange something for money, and I'm looking to see what's of value to people. And right now, this product isn't, because of the, the dangers going on with getting it to them. So this product is.
Well, I think that's one of the most beautiful V words out there, value.
Yeah.
And I mean, it has so much meaning, but I really don't think a lot of people comprehend what its true meaning is. And, like we say all the time, okay, I did this, I get $10 an hour. No, you don't. Your value, what you're doing is only worth that amount.
Yeah.
If you were doing something different in the same hour, it could be $133 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
There's no difference. You still have the hour, but it's what are you doing of value in that time.
That's the thing, right? That's what's being said in this chapter, is that, money is a thing that we use to demonstrate value. It's the thing that we use to demonstrate value. And as you said earlier, more and more it's becoming even rarer that we exchange it in a tangible form.
Right. And his formula for success is the rendering of a quality and a quantity of service.
Yes.
Number one, I mean, you have to, you can't be doing crappy coaching. You can't be selling crappy products to people, or, whatever. You need something that's decent, but then you have to repeat it over and over and over. You take like somebody like Joel Osteen, the TV
Mhm.
minister. Okay, he could preach to a small congregation of 40 people, and then that's the value that he will bring. But since he has taken it out onto the stage, it goes out to millions.
Mhm.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with him having an elevator in his house and having all this stuff. It's not because of anything, it's because he has provided more value to more people.
Yeah.
So
And
the universe
yes.
rewards that.
Yep. And I think that, I think what ends up happening is that people sometimes receive value and then squander it. And they have a harvest moment, reap the harvest without reinvesting. And so sometimes when you look at somebody like a Joel Osteen, it's like, well, I invested in the ticket. I went in, I reaped the benefits or the harvest of the information. I took it, it felt good, but it's never reinvested. And then, so then it's like you say, it becomes a waste of time because it doesn't work out or it didn't work for me. And that's what ends up happening to so many people. I think that's where this whole self-help junkie thing came from, is because a lot of people, or get rich quick or whatever it might be, it's like, it basically stems from, I don't feel good. I want to feel good right now. I'm ready to pay for it. And then I get a quick fix of feeling good. But then I don't take anything away. I don't value what's being presented to me. I don't value the processes being shown to me enough to recognize, how do I implement them, receive them so that I can use them for myself and then move on. And then people turn around and be like, it has no value. And then look at this guy put in an elevator. There's where my value went, into his elevator, and it becomes a whole nother story.
Right. But in that example, though, like with Joel, I mean, then there's people on the other side that are like, well, he's a religious person. He shouldn't be making money like that. That's wrong. You should not, if you're preaching, you should not be getting all kinds of money like that. And that's, but that's just ridiculous thinking.
Well, I always tell people that, I'm in the business of love and light, but when I checked in with the hydro company, they wouldn't accept love and light for the light. So it was just
Right.
like, it doesn't work like that. So this is a physical world. And so it's the same thing, as this whole chapter is. Money is the material formation of which we exchange energy, and for all things. So whether you're spiritual, religious, or Mother Teresa, there's bills to be paid. Mother Teresa had a foundation, she made money
Right.
and took care of her, had a roof over her head. And whether it's an elevator or a roof, that's up to you. A lot of times too, because people want their religious figures to struggle, and you're like, why?
Right. Right. Just like, why would you take an accountant that doesn't know how to lower their own tax liability?
Yeah. Well,
If
and it usually comes down to anybody who's usually bitter about somebody else having, is because they don't.
right. And see, now you said something else too. And I thought about this because a lot of people, they'll invest money, say, in a course or a program or a certification. And a lot of times they think, well, because I paid the money, that means I should automatically get the reward. Like they pay $10,000 for a franchise. Okay, that's fine. But you do know that there's steps that you have to do to get that franchise moved. Oh no, I put the money in, so that
It
should mean
should just work.
automatically
Yeah.
right. No, you have to work.
Because it's the energy, and that's the whole thing. And so, like, I looked at this, and I know this woman came in and she wanted these results, and I was like, sure, absolutely, no problem, I can deliver them to you. And you want them so fast, so it's going to be something that it costs you. Like, here's the thing, when I dedicate this amount of time to you, it takes me away from anything else I'm doing. So now that's all the time I have is going to you. It's going to be valued, at a certain level. So I think it really does come down to it, where people have to look at, there's more to it than, and I think when you talk about it that way, it comes down to this mentality of instant gratification and almost insta value. But
Right.
I mean, not for nothing, but once again, and I always come back to this, oftentimes we're really marketed towards insta value and we're sold on insta value. So when people don't see it, then they start to look at two things: something wrong with me, something wrong with the product or the program. And most
Right,
times it's easier to do this one than this one because we don't want to focus on what was going on.
right. And I was listening to Jim Rohn, and that's what he was talking about, when he first started with Earl Shove. And, why, Mr. Rohn, are you 25 years old and living a white male living in America, started a family, and you're broke? And Rohn said, I would have never thought to think of it was my philosophy. I thought it was the government. I thought it was the company policy. I thought it was the taxes. I thought it was all these things. No, it's what you're thinking was your problem. Because, like he said, in the first 6 years of his working life, he was broke.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't destitute. Destitute is nothing. He was broke. Too much month at the end of the money, but then the next 6 years, he became a millionaire.
Yeah.
Why? Because he changed his
Well, for sure.
philosophy.
And that's where I said, when I walked in, that's what the first thing I already knew, like 90% sure I was going to coach with this woman. But the first thing she said, how much money are you making right now? Asking, online. So you answer to yourself. And she said, that's what you're programmed for.
Right.
So if you want this figure, you got to change your programming. And it just was like, yes, because how many of us go to work and make whatever, I don't know what minimum wage is in the US, but let's say here it's like 15 bucks an hour. Okay. So how many of us are programmed to 15 bucks an hour, and we make that and we can go from this job to that job to that job for 15 bucks an hour because it's our programming. And how many of us are programmed at 30K a year and 50K a year and 75? So it totally was just like, yes, that's all it is the programming. And oftentimes when you reprogram, yes, there are some either maybe skills or there's knowledge you need to acquire, or, processes that you need to learn, things like that. But that's all part of the programming. And if you don't want to do that, you will stay programmed for $15 an hour. Again, nothing wrong with, but then if you're unhappy with that, you need to know that that is why.
But there's also, yes, and there's also a believability factor too, because if somebody's making $1,000 a week and you come in there and say, look, I can show you how you make $10,000 a week, in their mind, because they're again evaluating what they have to do for $1,000 a week, and that's too far of a jump for them right now to believe. Not that it wouldn't be believable, but you say to them, okay, you're making $1,000 a week, how about we just bump that up and you make 1,500 a week, an extra 500 a week. Then they're like, oh,
Yes,
that makes
because
sense.
it is your subconscious can process that.
Right.
Right. And so I feel that way too. I feel so sometimes what I observe happen in some of the programs I'm in is some people want to believe and they want to make it. So they make the jump and they run around and they do all this stuff. And then they get a little bit of it, but they don't get it all because they didn't really line themselves up for it. One of the things I always notice about myself is I take time to make those little jumps and make sure that I'm on board so my Jenga doesn't crumble.
Right. Yeah. Because the first step, people start a business, the first step to making that first $5,000 is you got to make the first $1 first. Don't be focused on the 5,000. Focus on making the one.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on selling one burger.
Yeah.
Focus on, fixing one car.
Yeah,
coaching one client.
A lot of people, that isn't impressive enough.
Again, people thinking that they're going to reap and be perfect right out of the gate. No,
And that's why I looked at, I was saying it to my daughter today. I was like, okay, I have a year in this program. So I've seen people, attain already. And so even if it takes me the full year, I'm going to get there. So I don't really care because I'm like, I know I'm going. It's not a if, it's a when. And so I'm going to make sure that I pace it so that I know it's repeatable for me, because I don't want to do it one time. I want it to become my new programming. So I'm going to continue, right?
So it's habitual.
Yeah.
It becomes a habit
Well, who
habit
wants
of
to learn how to
success.
lose 1 pound
Right,
one time, or 5 pounds one time, and then it comes back again. You never know how, you're never going to be able to do it again, kind of a thing. So you want to be able to know how to learn your formulas of what worked for you and how to attain it, because once you learn a pattern, you never unlearn it.
right. But you can choose not to follow it.
Yes, you can.
It's
But
like you,
if you know something and you want to continue it, you won't just wake up one day and be like, oh shit, how do I brush my teeth again? I completely zoned. Like, what do I do?
right,
It's not going anywhere. When you
right,
look for it and you're ready to do it, it's there. Yes, for sure. You can change, you can reprogram patterns, but the ones that you won't, you're not going to know less steps of brushing your teeth. You're going to always know the full thing. And so from there, you could compound on now and be like, oh, I do oil pulling and brush my teeth, or whatever it might
right.
be, goes along with it, right? So you can advance forward. But once you do those things and you create those neural pathways, they're there whenever you want to use them.
Exactly. And but again, it all takes effort on the part of we as humans,
Yeah.
because you can't be an extraordinary person without doing extra things. You're ordinary, but then you do extra things and then you become an extraordinary person.
Hence the word.
And it's like, but they just don't follow through. But
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else in this chapter that we might not have covered that,
I think so.
really?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, we talked about it we did address it in the sense of it taking time, and something might take time. Sometimes it's your mindset. All businesses don't need to take 5 years to be successful. Some do, it depends on what you're doing with it. If you really believe in it and you go for it, you can create things faster than that, right? So I think when they're talking about time frames, it doesn't always have to take eons.
Right. But the time frame is your time frame,
Yes, it is.
and you are 100% in control of that.
100%. So yeah, I
So,
think other than that, we covered it.
and your dinner's getting cold.
My dinner's frozen, so it's fine.
Oh, is it?
It
Oh.
can't get colder than that, Rodney.
So what are you going to do? Microwave it?
I can put in the oven.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end the recording here, but thank
Okay.
you for participating. And
Pleasure. You.
we might have a call next week. I don't know, because I fly
Yes, of
out
course.
Saturday. So I don't start until Monday, but Sunday, I don't know if I have to do anything, but we'll see. I mean, I would like to have a call.
Okay.
So, but we're gonna end the recording now. Stop recording. Do I want to stop the recording?